Welcome to the May 18th, 2017 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in pop culture. I am your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And OldManStompy reacts. We know how popular those videos are on YouTube.
Whoa.
I don't like it. Not at all. You're just the horse from Ren and Stimpy. I don't like it. But
that's a comparison that's never been made to me in my life before, so I appreciate that advice.
I actually would think that would be what your reactions would be. It was just like 5 seconds of you just going, I don't like it.
I don't like it.
So once again, Pyro has been fired for talking to his mother on a very appropriate day to talk to his mother.
Yes.
And we are heartless and aren't talking to our own mothers, which makes us good podcasters, but bad sons.
I talk to my mother. It's just that we got to record at 10 o'clock after, they all go to bed, and there's no way I can talk to them at that point.
All your mothers?
All of them.
All your mothers belong to us.
Yes. Make your time.
We do have a legitimate topic today, I swear.
Yes.
Yeah. 2 of them, in fact.
Wow.
Why don't you take it off the top, Lotus, so we can actually talk about something that people want to hear.
Yeah, please. About. Okay, so this I thought was rather interesting, and what brings the general subject to my attention is a particular Kickstarter that was launched very recently. This Reactive Consciousness is going up on a Thursday, so I am referring to not Tuesday 2 days ago, but the Tuesday before that, last week. A Kickstarter began for...
Why don't you just name the date?
Tuesday of last week. So
2 weeks before next Tuesday.
Yes. So anyway, a Kickstarter went up.
It was the 9th of May.
A Kickstarter went up for a board game adaptation of the video game Deadly Premonition. It's a board game, but it's mostly, or it appears to be mostly done with cards. And I guess the logic is you're trying to find the raincoat killer and examine, clues via people in the town, as you would have done in the video game. And Deadly Premonition is one of those games that I think was generally not very well known when it came out. It basically has a status from getting a cult following because it's like this janky-ass, goofy game, but it's supposed to be all serious and intense.
It got a cult following pretty quickly, though.
Yeah.
People were like, yo, you should buy this. It's $20. You should buy it.
Yeah, I was
awesome.
Overjoyed when it finally hit a system I owned. PS3 and Steam. But I got the PS3 one. But anyway, they were kickstarting a board game, and it even got Swery's approval. Swery's the guy who made the video game. Like, there are pictures of him, like, holding the board game. Like, hey.
And Winbag.
The Kickstarter was, it was funded in 8 hours. And not only that, but as of last I checked, it had raised $112,000, and they only wanted $50,000. Like, they're killing it. So, what I wanted to discuss was, in general, board game adaptations of video games, because there appear to be more of those lately. I've seen a bunch back in the day, like StarCraft. There are 2 Doom board games, but I have the old Fantasy... Well, they're all Fantasy Flight, but I got the one from, 2005. Not the expansion, but I got the Doom 3 board game. There's Bloodborne. I got that for Christmas. There's the recently shipped Dark Souls board game. There's a lot of board game adaptations of video games.
Yeah, there's also Metal Gear Risk.
No. Oh, Risk. Yeah, that's right. I was like,
there's
what?
Also Halo
oh,
Risk.
Yeah.
Well.
Both of those are really good concepts for Risk. Even though it's not a video game, one of my favorite Risk adaptations I've played was of, like, I was calling Risk 2021 or something, or some crazy year.
Yeah, actually, probably the most popular version of Risk by, like, hardcore video game players is actually the Lord of the Rings Risk.
Fair enough.
A lot of people really like that version because it has, like, a timer to it.
Okay. Because Sauron takes over?
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. It's when the hobbits hit Mount Doom.
Okay.
So that's like the conceit, the ticking time bomb is them walking the through Mordor and everything. So
sure, but like I particularly liked, again, even though it's not a video game, the post-apocalyptic like Risk 2021 or 2031, just because
you could take over the moon.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Nice.
Like, all the territories are radically different. Like, the United States is called something totally different, and it's not even divided, like, as the country we know it today. Like, certain countries have clearly taken over others. Before you start the game, there are 3 nuclear symbols that the players... I forgot how it's determined, but I think it's agreed on which 3 countries to put them on, and those countries are just no man's land. You cannot occupy or pass through those, the radioactive wastelands. And yeah, like you said, the moon is a territory. And like, in addition to your troops, you know, like, you have a man, which counts as 1, a horse, a cavalryman, which counts as 5 men. It's just like, it's like a $5 bill versus a $1 bill. It's just 5 $1 bills, you know, and like a cannon represents 10. But in the Risk post-apocalyptic game, you could actually get like commanders and generals for your armies that are like more powerful than the others. It's a really total evolution of the game.
But
that's part of that.
Is the horse still in the game because you can take a horse to the moon? Then that sounds...
No, they're different kinds of units. That make more sense. I'm just referring to Risk's general characters. I should have specified that.
It's worth noting that that's Hasbro's Avalon Hill line, which was tasked with making hardcore board game versions of classic board games. So generally speaking, there were like really cool versions of Stratego that came out of that line.
Yeah, and you also got, I don't know if it's
Stratego Legends, I believe is what it was called. It was a cool version of Stratego.
Yeah, and you also, I don't know if it's Avalon, but just like Mario and Zelda and Street Fighter versions of Monopoly. The Zelda one, it's either brand new or it's coming soon. But I mean, it's still Monopoly, but it's just fun because it's like, oh well, it's the Deku Tree. That's my property. Like, instead, like, it's the same game, but it's just it's a fun little flair. You know, there's always been a million versions of Monopoly, so why not this stuff too?
It's worth noting that this isn't a recent phenomenon. There have always pretty much been video game board games. It's just that now they've actually become really good serious board games. Before, they were kind of just like part of the marketing machine of most video games at the time. So like Pac-Man would have a board game, or Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers would have or Donkey Kong would all have their own board games.
Zaxxon.
They would all be more part of as advertisements of the primary product.
But even so, another evolution in board games though is even those board games were they were like Parker Brothers board games, where it's like go around the board and do things vaguely related to the video game. Like they were things that apparently your kids could play, or you could play with your family.
Apparently, the Pac-Man game was actually well regarded, but that was the exception.
But
they were mostly just Candyland,
that's the thing. You go around the board. It's a family game. But something like the Dark Souls board game or whatever, or even the Bloodborne one, which is a lot simpler. Those games are for like board gamers who you would find in hobby shops. Yeah, like exactly. They have rules that you do not nearly care enough to read. Like, let's play the game for a quick afternoon. Like, you need to read the rule book like well before you actually play, so you know how to play and don't take an hour figuring it out as you go. But once you do play, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So stuff in that regard.
It's Oh, go ahead.
I guess, like, wheeling back a bit to the starting topic, I'm curious now. Like, so just to frame the conversation a little bit, Deadly Premonition is literally Twin Peaks the game. It started out as Twin Peaks the game. Yeah. It didn't actually have the license to make a Twin Peaks game.
Oh.
So all I did was basically erase the names of all the characters, change them very slightly, and plop them all back in. So, like, in Twin Peaks, there's a character who talks to a log, or hears voices from a log. And in Deadly Premonition, it's a character who talks to, like, a hot pot. And it's literally the same character,
and
more or less.
There is also a very similar character in Alan Wake, I might add.
And by the way, even in Deadly Premonition, by the way, regarding it being a Twin Peaks game, even it's a large part of the game, but the combat with the weird ghost enemies was apparently added later because of studio meddling. The guy really wanted it to be more of just a straight detective investigation game. So if the combat feels really poorly implemented, that's because it was.
Right, but that's part of the point. Like, the game plays incredibly awkwardly. It's a budget title. It's really buggy. So, like, what makes
it was
the game...
for a system that nobody owned in Japan, its country of origin.
The original Xbox.
The Xbox 360 originally.
That explains how it became sort of shovelware for the 360, but certainly that didn't affect its, popularity in America, where lots of people own 360s because of Halo. The game's gameplay is not why it's popular. It's popular because it lives and breathes personality, because it's a really authentic replication of the kind of town that Twin Peaks takes place in. It's really fun to explore. It's really fun to interact with all the characters, and they all have little individual storylines and routines.
It's the dialogue.
Quirks. Yeah, the dialogue is some of my favorite. Like, my favorite is that one assistant guy. Like, I don't know.
Oh, like, Mr. Stewart's assistant. And he
Deadly Premonition you'd think would be sickly, but its board game was funded quite quickly. So says Mr. Stewart.
So part of what's so funny about that is that Mr. Stewart doesn't talk in rhyme. All the rhymes are made up by the assistant on the spot.
Oh, that's great.
So
What's tough to imagine is, like, how do you distill that to a game? Like,
I was just about to say that.
Sorry, great. I said it first. Ha! Take that, Vice. Score 1 for Old Man. I'm winning this game.
Old Man opportunist.
Anyway, please, no. You can have my leavings. You can go ahead.
You can have my leavings. Shit. Enjoy OldManStompy's dregs.
Seconds from OldManStompy. Jeez. No, I mean, what I was gonna say is, like, the thing that board games nowadays have to do, like video game board games, a requirement of them is that they have to distill the essence of playing the game in some way.
Oh, okay. They have to. They kind of do. They
have to do that because they have to feel like an extension of the property. They can't just be like, the characters doing something on the board. It's not like that. You want to feel like you're playing a Doom board game when you're playing Doom. The Doom game. You want to feel like it feels like Doom. So I think what you were getting at, right, is how do you take the Deadly Premonitionist, what people like about Deadly Premonition, which is charmingly janky and weird, full of weird dialogue. Like, how do you make a board game out of that?
Well, here's the basic idea. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to get the personality here, but they may try. Here's the basic idea.
But they better try. Otherwise,
no, I know, but like
the dice don't work every time you try to use them. Like,
no.
The dice have like arcane symbols that you have to like look up in a guide to figure out what they mean.
No, here's the basic idea. Here's the basic idea. So it's a 2 to 4 player, like I said, card based board game, and I don't know how you're supposed to do a 2-player, but apparently you are working with other detectives, whom I assume are the players. So I don't know how you would do this if on only a 2-player game. But at least for 3 and 4 players, apparently one of you is the killer, and you find out by clues you get from up to 6 townsfolk, like NPCs. So it says your suspects begin in the incriminated row until you have enough evidence that they should be presumed innocent. So it's guilty before innocence. So
right.
Once all of your suspects have been cleared of guilt and you've proven yourself to be a trusted detective, you can begin to go on the offense to identify which player is the hidden killer. But again, in a 2-player game, I don't know how that's supposed to work unless it's like Risk and you have like a dummy player. But I don't know.
It's so weird.
I mean, that I could get behind. Like, that sounds sort of creepy enough that it would work without, like, because part of part of Deadly Premonition is understanding the protagonist, right?
Yeah.
The guy you play as, he talks to himself a lot and he sounds a little unhinged. So understanding where he comes from is part of the mystery. And so, in a game where you don't know who the killer is, in a card game, where either of you, I guess, could be the killer and you don't really understand yourselves, like that feels consistent with the theme of mystery that the original game was trying to convey.
Yeah, I can get behind that too. All right, well that makes sense. Speaking of, have you had a chance to play the Dark Souls board game? Because I recently
not a
that.
chance. I mean, like, I have free time, but like getting together with other people is getting progressively more difficult because of our different locations. And this is an in-depth game. Like, I could get together with Luminaire or Mr. Ryu and like do like a 2-player Dark Souls game, but it's like that's got to be a group experience. I want to make that like an event when we finally play that.
If only 2 of your previous podcast guest hosts were also in the same geographic area as you right now and could have been playing the game.
Yes.
Including one who played Dark Souls extensively.
Yeah, I mean, again we could, but like aligning our schedules is quite difficult, especially with Mr. Ryu.
I think Memorial Day might be a good time, but
that would also be my birthday. Perfect opportunity.
Yeah. Well, good thing I have your present ready for you. Nothing.
Yeah. I was just gonna say like spite. Sweet.
Disdain.
No, I get enough of that from you, OldManStompy,
yeah,
and Mr. Ryu.
I give it away for free. It doesn't have any value.
No value in that.
Like again, I think we might have mentioned this in the podcast before, but especially during Undertale. But like, you and Mr. Ryu's gimmick is just like shitting on me like during the Let's Play. It's like, oh,
that's not really a gimmick.
Yeah.
As much as it is a social dynamic.
So if people are bored of me shitting on Vice in the podcast, they can listen to me shit on Lotus Prince.
That's right.
In our upcoming Let's Play.
Yes. So good. But by the way, the Dark Souls core set was released. They also made expansions for it, but those I do not believe are going to ship out until October. But Dark Souls, they did release the rulebook. I forgot how it works. I forgot if you're working with other players to beat the game or if you're competing with them. Because, like, in Bloodborne, you're not fighting the other players, but you are competing with each other to get the most points, first. So you're playing against the game, sure. But it's, like, healthy competition as opposed to really games where, like, you're directly trying to take people out. Yeah, Bloodborne was interesting. And like the Doom 3, I don't know about the new Doom board game, but the Doom 3 board game, that had to be house rules to hell, because otherwise it's extremely broken in the GM's favor. But if you play it like Dungeons and Dragons and you fudge it so it makes it difficult but winnable for the players, I actually found that to be a lot of fun as well. And it kind of did provide the Doom experience, except for the incredibly stupid breaking weapons and even fucking breaking keycard mechanic. But like if you just eliminate that stuff, it's like, look, use the damn shotgun, which has limited ammo. Then okay, I can get behind that, and it actually becomes a pretty fun game if you house rule it. I don't know how Doom 4 plays, but I would assume that it improved upon previous mechanics. And Dark Souls, I have a lot of faith in, and also this is just me, but like the figures just look really cool. They look really cool. And some are from Dark Souls 1, and I recognize them immediately, and some I think are from like 2 and 3, so I'm not as familiar with them, but they still look cool.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish Nintendo would make their own board games. I think that would be really cool if they did.
I could see that working out.
They really only use them as like mascots on like Monopoly and things like that. Right
although this is kind
like
of
Donkey Kong Jenga and things like that.
Yeah. I will say they did have a pretty cool crossover with Kinects, where you can make like little Mario Kart tracks for the little carts to go over. Cool. Like that's not a game, but like that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I just wish they would make like a Mario Party like board game.
Mario Party like already is a board game except for the mini games in between. Like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, but like have something like it would be really neat if they gave you something to do in the real world, like in lieu of the mini games, like do an activity with the other players. On
one hand, I was thinking that, but on the other hand, I will bet you that people will just be like, okay, activity, let's take the next turn. You know, I was watching Phalus and Obscurus Lupa doing their Lupa in particular is like a really hardcore, like, you know, like into Baywatch, like reviewing the episodes and like how goofy they are. And there's a Baywatch board game where every turn, yeah, I know, where like every turn you draw like a trivia card or an activity card, which is like, do like 10 jumping jacks or some bullshit. And they're just like, they just kind of stop playing the game and they're like, let's just do the trivia cards. And they're just seeing who could answer the trivia questions like it was Trivial Pursuit. And that was more enjoyable. You know, so for the Mario Party game, you could have little silly things, but like, I bet you after like a few minutes of that, it's going to be like, all right, let's just go back to rolling the dice.
Well, I mean, I guess a game series that does that better is Cranium. Cranium is like really good for that kind of thing. Like they give you different activities to do based on what you do to roll. So like you can have ones that involve like Play-Doh that they include with the board game, or they, you know, you do it like a drawing activity.
Because that's my main concern. If it doesn't come with stuff like that for you, then the game's basically telling you to invent your own game elsewhere, like make your own fun. It's like, well, wait a minute.
No, I mean, like give you the onus to do those kinds of things too. Like, I don't know, it would be kind of fun.
No, I could see that.
I don't know, this jumping jacks thing, I feel like that's not the game's fault. I feel like that's their fault that they don't want to do jumping jacks.
Yeah, you want to get in the spirit of the game that you're playing and get into it.
I mean, I do get it, but it's just like, are they really gonna just like deny me my points based on this distraction, like where everyone just watches me do like however many push-ups or something? It's just like, I mean, to be fair though, they were doing it for the purpose of a video, so they did make it more efficient in that regard, so that might have also played a part in it.
I don't know. I feel like that would have made pretty good cinematography to watch one of them do jumping jacks or periodic, you know, like push-up drills or something. Like, that's probably more fun than watching them roll dice. Well,
no, because they stopped rolling the dice and they were just going for the trivia, which actually did end up being more entertaining because they were pretty damn good at the trivia.
All right, I'll buy it.
Yeah, fair enough. But I don't know whether I'm gonna back this one, just because I guess. The more I get older, and I like have all of these board games that I haven't played yet. Like I have the Gears of War one, I have the StarCraft one, and they all take like tons of time to play. Yeah. And as an adult, I don't really have that tons of time, and you also have to study them, and also you don't get a really good sense the first time you play any of these with a certain group of people that of if the game's even good or not.
Yeah, like I remember
you're struggling through it.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. Like the first time, like I love the Arkham Horror board game and its expansions.
Yeah, that one's really good.
Which we played with Perry a bunch of times, and it's so fun. But like the first time we played it, it turns out we were like getting some core mechanic wrong, and you know we actually had a really good chance against the elder guy we had to fight, and it's supposed to be possible, but seriously, you're not gonna win, you know. And we just totally like forgot how to play that part, so like the first experience was a little janky, even if we did enjoy ourselves a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be into buying like these board games and looking forward to playing them, but like I just don't have the built-in people to play them. You know, I just don't.
Yeah, it gets way harder.
You guys just we were all scattered, so we only can really play these during conventions. Yeah. So it's tough.
Yeah, that was the last time I played a board game was Bloodborne at MagFest in January.
But the Dark Souls one is one of the first ones in a long time that I actually bought, and it's more a fanfare kind of thing. It's kind of like buying, you know, the vinyls that I've been buying. You know, like it's kind of like it's like a tribute to something you love.
That's the thing. Even if I don't end up enjoying it, I'm happy that I have it.
Yeah, you have the figurines that go with it. You can pose the figurines if you want to because they're really well made and nice.
They got Titanite demons, man. Those things are crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I like about these things, you know. And they're of course well made nowadays, and they have really good people behind them. But and some of them are really expensive. I mean, the Doom board game is like $100, like the new Doom board game.
The new one is.
Yeah, the new one's $100. So are all the games based off of that system. With the Star Wars game that's based off of that system, and I think it's called Judgment or no, Descent. Descent. Yeah. So like the Doom board game, Star Wars Intergalactic Assault, and Descent are all based off of this one board game called Descent. So they're all derived off of this one board game, and apparently it's a gigantic board game. It just has tons of pieces and things. So like it's an expensive board game. Every one of those is $100 just for the base thing. So I mean, it's an expensive investment for something that I don't know whether I'm gonna have time for.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate. If I recall, like even like any level of enthusiast board game, like they start at $40, which makes sense because you get a lot of physical pieces. But it's tough to justify when you don't know how fun the game is, or if you'll have fun with your group of friends. It's a little bit different than a video game, where you often have like online matchmaking. If you want to play multiplayer, if your friends don't really like it, or if they don't play it, or you can just play the single player campaign. If you buy a board game, it doesn't have a single player mode usually, and you've got a box that takes up a lot of space. If you can't get your friends into it, sometimes, or even worse, if one of them owns it, already, and you just wasted $40.
Yeah. So I'm glad I have it, but I'll probably end up buying the Bloodborne one because I actually like that one. And it's a reasonably priced game. It's like $30 now.
And it doesn't take forever to learn, and it doesn't take forever to play. Like the game's supposed to be like 30-40 minutes.
Yeah, that one I will definitely buy. I may buy the Doom board game, but that's about it. Like
Doom is something I'd be curious about. I would be
Yeah.
curious to see how Doom works. And again, I'm just a sucker for even just having the Doom pieces in the game.
The pieces are really well detailed.
Yeah.
You should check them out. They're really cool looking.
Like
especially
even with a Doom 3 board game, like it's fun to play again if you fudge the rules like you wouldn't believe. But it's just kind of interesting to have and to see how the level unfolds, because you can do campaigns as are given to you in the instruction manual, but you could just make up whatever the hell. Like if you want to, you can make it a procedurally generated map.
Nice.
Yeah. So, having said all that, did you have any other major ones that you wanted to mention?
No, the main ones I wanted to go into, despite not possibly being able to play Deadly Premonition or not yet having played Dark Souls, those were kind of the main ones I wanted to focus on just because they're a little more topical and there's hype behind them.
I will say I kind of want to pick up the Deadly Premonition one if it's anywhere halfway decent. I don't own a lot of board games, and I did really like Deadly Premonition, even though playing it is kind of a chore as a game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really impressed that a game like this, like Deadly Premonition, has a chance to have any sort of ancillary products go along with it, let alone something like a sequel. You could see like a cult favorite getting a sequel, but getting merchandise to go along with it is a totally different deal many years after the games come out.
Now, if only they could have a Kickstarter for D4's other chapters, that'd be nice.
Yeah. But they need to be Kinect enabled.
Yeah. Actually, it is on GOG, at least the first chapter. You can just play it.
Well, yeah, the PC versions are not Kinect enabled, obviously, but
yeah.
The original version of the game, the original intention of the game was
that's right.
a Kinect enabled game for the Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, having said that, I did want to move on here to the other segment, which is I wanted to go over the Monster World games, which have been a favorite of mine for a while now. I'm a big fan of Sega Master System games, but I didn't grow up with the Sega Master System. I only really became aware of its existence until I was like a junior or senior in high school, when the internet became a little bit more easier, a little easier to use, and then I started using the internet even more frequently when I was in college. So like I got word of it. The problem was I was insulated at the time by the official magazines of the companies that I followed. I wasn't into Electronic Gaming Monthly or GamePro growing up, so I really only I had Sega, I had Nintendo Power and Sega Visions growing up. So of course I only really knew about Sega stuff and Nintendo stuff, and they didn't talk about their competitors in those magazines. And not until Nintendo Power got to be a lot more mature and towards the end of its life did it start acknowledging that there were other companies that existed out besides Nintendo. I found out a lot about the Master System, and I started playing some of the like hidden gems on there before. Some of them got really expensive. I ordered a Master System, before a lot of other people had gotten wind of it and started collecting for it. And so quite a few of the games on it that I enjoyed were like the version of Ninja Gaiden on the Master System is really great. The version of the Ghostbusters game that was on the NES is actually a lot better on the Sega Master System. It's probably the best version of that game. The NES version's terrible, but the Master System one is awesome. But probably amongst the best games on that system is the Wonder Boy games. And this series is very complicated. It goes kind of along with our Falcom discussion a couple weeks ago. In that it's very odd how it came about. The first game is simply called Wonder Boy. So a lot of people may know this actually in its more popular form as Adventure Island. So Wonder Boy is this game where you play as an island kid who is very easily damaged and constantly starving. It's basically a runner. You're constantly running. Your character is constantly jogging, and you need to pick up fruit, not as health, but in order to stave off your hunger from the food bar going all the way down and killing you. So everybody knows this game as Adventure Island, and it's kind of interesting how that happened. So Adventure Island is the NES port of the arcade game Wonder Boy, where it starred like this blonde-haired kid. But they replaced the character with Takahashi Meijin, who was actually a popular employee of Hudson. He was actually kind of like a little kid hero. He was an employee that knew how to play Star Soldier, which is a different shmup that was very popular in Japan at the time, and they made a cartoon character out of one of their employees and put him in the Wonder Boy game and put it on Nintendo and Famicom. Well, this is where the series actually became two different series. The Adventure Island series and the Wonder Boy series actually diverged from there. So the Adventure Island series actually stayed more in tune with its roots by having this character where this series of games where you need to keep moving forward quickly and collect fruit while jumping over hazards and avoiding bad guys and trying to collect weapons to use against them. So that's the main conceit of Adventure Island games. Almost all of them include that mechanic. But whereas the Wonder Boy games diverged, after that, the second one is Wonder Boy in Monsterland, which is a good game in its own right. It's on the Master System as well. And also, a lot of these games were ported elsewhere. They became... this one actually became Sayuki World in Japan on the NES. So they would license out these games to be ported elsewhere and be replaced with other characters. So for anybody who doesn't know, Sayuki World is a series of games that chronicle the Journey to the West story, like every other, a lot of other Japanese games do. But the sequel is actually came to America in the form of Wampum. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
Actually, it was the first game in the Mexican Runners NES Mania thing where you beat every NES game. Wampum was the very first one.
Nice.
It's quite a good game despite its cultural insensitivity. It's very much like almost like Mega Man.
Yeah, it's Mega Man-ish.
Yeah. So so already the lineage has gotten quite complicated. So the second game was an arcade game that had RPG elements. So that was kind of popular in Japan at the time, where you could gain levels and gain experience, but it was also really hard. You needed to find secrets and go in secret doors and find secret items and get better armor and things like that, all while under a time limit and, also without knowing a lot of these things intuitively. They would be hidden things that you would find through each playthrough, and you would learn over time. Kind of like Tower of Druaga was popular in that regard. In Japan, it's just like one of those games that is not supposed to be intuitively beaten the first time you play it. You're supposed to flounder a lot and spend a lot of credits on it in order to learn the game and learn every step of it and find all the secrets. And also, you're supposed to talk to friends. And this would be the type of game where they would leave people would leave Post-it notes on the Japanese arcade game. So
this style of game doesn't work anymore because it's kind of what Square was trying with Final Fantasy XII by making all the spawn points and rare monsters really obscure to require you to use the internet to coordinate with people to find them. And that turned out to be like one of the most frustrating parts of the game, especially to completionists. So it doesn't really... People don't seem to like that anymore. It's not as
Dark Souls
popular.
is kind of like that. Kind of.
Well, it's not really... Like, there's no knowledge in the Dark Souls game that you can't glean from, like, a guidebook and...
Yeah, I was going to say the guides come out at the same time as the game themselves. So you can use the internet, but you don't have to.
And the people who write the guide, like one of them, for one of the Dark Souls games, he posts on YouTube by the name Epic Name Bro, and he's extremely knowledgeable in the game mechanics, and he tried to distill that knowledge into the guide as best he can. I think the way he talked about it, working on the guide, was an effort equivalent to the translation of Trails in the Sky second chapter.
Oh my god.
Nice.
Who remember us talking about that on several instances of this podcast previously.
Sure. Well, this game, while a very frustrating experience nowadays, is actually like a really really neat turning point in the series, in that the game became like an action platformer, kind of like a sword and sorcery platformer, not unlike an Ys 3 or a Legend of Zelda 2, side-scrolling, fantasy-inspired, platforming action game. So rather than one where you have to are constantly pressured to run and collect food, which was the original conceit. It's neat. That game has a lot of different versions. There's a PC Engine version, a TurboGrafx version. The Sega Master System one is probably the most well known in the United States because that was the only official version in English at the time. Nowadays, we actually have an English version of the arcade game, which didn't exist officially for a long time, because what ended up happening was the creator of the Wonder Boy series actually had remembered that they had produced an English version of that game, and he still had a copy of the PC board.
That's awesome.
And they released it on Xbox Live Arcade as part of the Wonder Boy collection. Yeah. So you can actually play the official English version of Wonder Boy and Monsterland in its original arcade format very easily now. It's on Xbox One. So that was one of the really cool things about that game. So probably the best version is the arcade, because for whatever really dumb reason, this is a very difficult game, but the Sega Master System version has no continues, and it's a very difficult game. And while it was a good port, it is so much, and it's easier in general, like in playing it, but you can't beat it. Like it's so hard. You can't hope to beat him when sitting like that. It's a very difficult game, and the arcade one at least lets you continue. So go for that version. And the original Wonder Boy, actually, you want to go for the Sega Master System version because it's an improved version over the arcade. They added levels to it, and it controls better. and it's better than the NES version, the Adventure Island series game. Adventure Island's a very difficult game, but Wonder Boy on the Sega Master System is much more manageable in comparison, even though it's the same game. It's kind of funny like that. But anyway, the third game in the series is Dragon's Cursed, or Dragon's Trap.
I think it's Trap, because I think I remember you picking that one up at that store near me.
Well, that's actually part of. It's actually both. That's why I said it like that.
Oh.
Depending on which version you buy.
Nani.
So. Yeah. So there's a PC Engine version of that game. It's also called. Confusingly, the Japanese version of that is called Adventure Island on the PC Engine to make it even more confusing. But the Sega Master System version is the version to play, because that was like the original version to come out. It was really good. The PC Engine version or TurboGrafx version is quite good. So what's cool about this game is it was one of the it's probably the first great game in the series. Like, Wonder Boy is really fun. I really like it. The second one is a very frustrating game. It's fun from a perspective of somebody who likes the series, but the third game is really like the best game in the series up at, that really defined what Wonder Boy was all about. It takes place right after the end of the game before it, which is pretty neat. So kind of like how Castlevania Symphony of the Night begins with the end of Castlevania Rondo of Blood.
Yeah.
It's very similar. It begins with the end of the last game.
I like stuff that does that. Of all games in the world, Galarian's Ash did that. Mm-hmm. And it was just really cool because the original Galarians had Resident Evil style controls and fixed camera angles. So you're fighting the final boss of the game with one particular camera angle because you can't move very far. And all of a sudden, the PS2 version has you replay the last couple rooms of that dungeon and then fight the first game's boss. But, like, it's free movement. You can move the camera. Like, the graphics aren't fantastic by PS2 standards, but that blew my mind when I saw it. I love seeing stuff like that.
Well, this game is cool in that it was one of the first games to do that kind of thing. Ys 2 probably did that, I believe. It kind of like picks off right where the last one ended, but you actually play through the last battle in this one. Yeah. And it was recently. This was also the first game in the series that was made specifically for consoles. It is not derived from an arcade game. So the first version of the game is the Sega Master System version. And it's also like a Metroidvania style game. The conceit of the game is that the final boss of the previous game cursed you. That's the Dragon's Curse. Cursed your character of the Wonder Boy and to lose his human form. So you start off as a dragon, because he was a dragon, and you subsequently go through the game and gain different forms. So it's a Metroidvania style game. So each of the forms has different access to different things. So you start off as a dragon, and then you can become a mouse who can stick to walls and get into small spaces, which is really neat. And then you can get the merman form, the lion man form, the birdman and then finally the human form.
Sounds almost like
Dash-man.
Can you like choose forms, or do you have a particular form for each level?
So it's not level based. It's a Metroidvania style game.
Okay, because it was making me think of Altered Beast at first.
So what's great about this is that at first you only have access to whatever bad guy changed you into that last form. Like you meet all these different dragons in the game, and they each give you curse you with a new form. So each time you beat them, you get cursed again, and that's what the different forms are. But eventually, you get to the point where you can open up these shrines where you could switch forms.
You know,
on the fly.
It's kind of reminiscent of Paper Mario 1000-Year Door, where you like open these boxes that curse you. They're like evil spirits, and they curse you with a new form. But it turns out to be like exactly what you need to like overcome the next obstacle.
Wait,
exactly.
Here's a question. I think I remember this, but how do you spell, like, for Dragon's Curse or Dragon's Trap? How do you spell dragons? Where's the apostrophe? Because it could technically go either way.
I'm pretty sure it's straight up apostrophe yes, but
okay, because like implying the previous game's dragon as opposed to this new game's multiple dragons.
Well, yeah, it would be a spoiler otherwise that there are more dragons.
Although technically, I guess it would have to be Dragon's Curses at that point. So yeah.
No, Dragon's Trap. It's apostrophe yes, but you're right. It could work either way.
Yeah.
But they just remade this game. It also is a very charming game on top of being one that's fun to play, and it's a great game. And it also was pretty innovative for the time because Metroidvanias weren't as popular as they are now. And pretty much only Metroid and Zillion had done it. Maybe like a few other, obscure PC games had done that kind of structure before. Mm-hmm. Maybe Clash at Demon Head at that point, but not many. Let's just say that. Haven't done this kind of thing where you have an open world and you kind of explore it through different gates of abilities. So on top of that, it had very charming characters in it. Like the bad guys were fun looking. They were drawn very well and kind of had a personality to them, even if they were only showing up for a couple moments at a time. And also, like, the shopkeepers just had a lot of personality. Like one of them is famously a smoking one-eyed pig. He looks like a pirate, and he's just charming looking. He's cool. Like, you're buying stuff from this guy. That's awesome. So that recently got remade. It's the best game, one of the best games in the series, and they did it in a hand-drawn style, which is great. It's a beautiful game. They did a really fantastic job. They even added to the game to make it a little longer, I believe.
Nice.
And they also included the original version of the game too. You can switch it on the fly, kind of like the Monkey Island remake. So you with one of the shoulder buttons, you can switch over to the 8-bit Sega Master System version. But really, the remade visuals and remade music is incredibly charming and doubles down on what made the original game charming, and in the same spirit, and has a lot of really cool detail in the background. So I definitely recommend people pick this up. It's for Xbox One, PS4, Switch, and PC. I got the Switch version because I wanted to be able to play it on the fly, and it's a good fit for the system, I feel, because it's just a cool game to play on the go. And they also added the option of playing a girl as well, which is really cool. And they even retrofitted her into the Sega Master System graphics, which was also really neat. So if you're playing as the girl, they made a new sprite for her and everything to fit into the old aesthetic. And you can choose which version of the music that you want to hear too. The original music is great, but the new versions are really cool because they have like the music has a lot of heart to them. There's like sea shanty versions of like the original soundtrack, and like accordion, like upbeat accordion music. Really, really great job remaking the game. It's kind of a shame that I don't think you could do this to every game in the series, because not all of them are as good or as enjoyable as this one version. So I think it may be a one and done kind of thing, unfortunately, because the game after this is a weird one. It's almost like a shooter. It's another arcade game. It's almost like the original Wonder Boy in a lot of ways. It involves you collecting fruit and shooting enemies with your sword and things like that. It's like a very much of an arcade game. And then the game after that is another console game. that was released for the Genesis. I need to look up the name. I'm using Kurt Kalata's Sega Arcade Classics Volume 1 as my guide through this because it's such a complicated series.
Yep.
But that would be, let me see here, the Dynastic Hero, or Wonder Boy and Monster World for the Genesis. So that would be another one in the style of this game. You could probably remake that one in this style because it's a similar type game.
So there is a spiritual successor coming out like this year called like Monster Boy and something World.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm just saying, like, this company specifically, who did such a good job making this one, is going to have a hard time following it up, because where do you go from here? And then the game after that,
they could probably do Adventure Island 4 or Super Adventure Island 2, which are both Metroidvanias in their own right. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
No, those are great games, but those are Hudson properties, therefore Konami properties now.
Yeah, well, the same company isn't doing the new spiritual successor, so you could do very similar.
Yeah, that's true.
You could figure it out. I mean, Konami, I think, is looking for a cheap buck these days. So,
what they could do is they can make a new game in the series using the same, similar aesthetic. They could make a new one. I mean, why not?
Right.
It's Lizard Cube.
This year is high visibility. I think I saw Adventure Island 4 as one of the highlights on AGDQ, so it's sort of circulating the internet right now. It's one of those games that proves that a flying power up is really broken in a platformer. So you should do everything in your power to keep it.
Yeah, didn't they use do one of the Game Boy games or something?
That might have been elsewhere in the marathon. I'm sure all of the mainline Adventure Island games are since they encourage fast movement and they've all been built off of this running and collecting fruit and keeping time thing. They lend themselves really well to being speedrun.
Mm-hmm.
Probably except for 4 and Adventure Island 2, because they're Metroidvanias.
Yeah. Well, 4 was a speed run. Like, in that case, it's not always just about doing it fast. It's also about, like, breaking the game, which is sometimes fun. And sequence breaking, which is, like, the best part of Metroidvanias for a lot of people.
So that also cues into the also complicated chronology of these two series in that they kind of cross over genres from time to time and go into each other from time to time. With Adventure Island, usually returning back to its roots in collecting fruit, so Master Higgins doesn't die. But yeah, every once in a while they have the occasional Metroidvania with those two games in particular. But the last game in the series, the Adventure Island game for WiiWare, which is a terrible, awful game, which I can't believe they did on AGDQ, by the way, because it's just a garbage game.
I don't know. It didn't like, it wasn't obvious from the race why it was terrible. It seemed fine. So just to frame things a little bit, at AGDQ they do what's called the mystery race, where they take 4 high-profile speedrunners and they drop them in front of the most obscure games they can find. And they pick the WiiWare Adventure Island remake as the WiiWare Adventure Island, follow-up as the final game. Because apparently, the Adventure Island game obviously has a long lineage, as Vice has talked about during the segments, but also nobody really bought the WiiWare version. And I guess part of it was because it wasn't very good, but they played through the first 2 levels, and it just kind of felt like an Adventure Island game. Like, it was tough. It was not particularly forgiving, but these
it's an
two
ugly
guys,
game too.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, an ugly game by Wii standards. It's not atrocious. It's not unplayable. It's bad for a current generation title. But it's not that much worse looking than a bog standard NES game. So if
it's pretty ugly, so, it looks very lazy.
I remember the early Adventure Island games had really repetitive bosses.
They're all exactly the same guy. In fact, they all have the same body.
Yeah, so it kind of felt like they tried to capture that spirit in the new WiiWare game, and that probably was a mistake because it wasn't really good design.
Yeah, fair enough. But I did want to move on and say that probably the final game in the the Monster World series is Monster World 4, which first of all, the title doesn't make any sense because it's not the 4th game in the series by a long shot. It's something like the 6th or 7th. but it stars a girl, so they couldn't call it Wonder Boy. And it's also a really great, fantastic game for the Genesis. So this game is also the main inspiration behind Shantae and the Shantae series right now.
Nice.
Very similar character, has an Arabian aesthetic, very vibrant, great pixel art, really fantastic visuals, really great gameplay. Probably one of the best games on the Genesis. And we didn't get enough... It was really unfortunate that we didn't get it in the United States. We had to play AN Genesis's translation for a long time, and then finally they actually released an official translation of that game for the Wii and XBLA on that same Wonder Boy collection for XBLA. So we are very lucky in order to be able to play that game. That one could be remade as well, though that game is particularly known for its aesthetic and how awesome it looks. So remaking it and giving it new updated visuals is kind of takes away from what made the game so special at the time. So I don't know whether that's a good move or not.
The original Shantae could use a remake, since we're talking about that. It's a little dated.
It's a hard game to play. It's a very difficult game. It's a lot of the enemies take far too many hits to kill. That's one thing that I've noticed about it.
It's. I mean, I have gone back and played it because it's easily available on the DS eShop, or the Virtual Console for the 3DS, which is what, like 2% as expensive as it costs to buy an actual cartridge for the Game Boy. So
yeah, it's insanely expensive.
Sure. It's probably the way to go.
Yeah, it's probably the most expensive Game Boy game by a long shot. Game Boy Color game, at least. By a long shot, and getting a box copy of it because it's a critical darling, a cult hit, and also was released at the very end of the system's lifespan when a lot of copies of a game wouldn't be made, and also has a lineage now.
Yeah.
So
it's just that it's sort of halfway between a platformer and a Metroidvania when the series has evolved into Metroidvania, so it's kind of tough to go back and play the game. Though I can see how it was really good at the time.
Oh yeah, and it's probably the nicest looking Game Boy Color game probably ever made. By a long shot.
They have a lot of fun animating Shantae. They gave her a lot of personality. They gave all the characters in the game a lot of personality.
Yeah, and that really has a lot borrowed from Wonder Boy. The games were always really charming and a lot of fun to play. And it's really great that somebody noticed that. People who grew up with those games noticed that and made their own series that was had its own personality, but learned from them and took inspiration from. So,
a bit of a follow-up question. Would you recommend the Wonder Boy collection? What's missing from that collection if you want to play the Wonder Boy series? Not the Adventure Island games notwithstanding. Let's sort of not get into that right now. But what's your personal recommendation? How would one go about getting into the series?
So the best way to get into it is that remake that I was just talking about that just came out. It's a really great. That game in particular is the one that I would point to as the first game to play in its original form, in any aspect, because it is just a fun game. Even though it's an older game than some of the other games in the series, it is a solid old school game that is really charming and a lot of fun to play. And it's not a frustrating experience. It's actually very beatable, but still challenging. Nice. A lot of fun to play. I really enjoyed it. And it's very accessible right now, and you could play it with the old aesthetic and new aesthetic. It's a very comprehensive game on top of it. Now, if you want to go to the XBLA or PS3 Sega Vintage Collection Monster World collection that I mentioned, it has Wonder Boy 2. It has Wonder Boy in Monster World. It does not have Dragon's Curse on it, which is very odd because it's one of the best games in the series. But it has 4 on it, so it doesn't have the first game. It has the second game, the 4th game, and the 6th game in the series. So it is a good thing to have because it has a lot of the games on it. It's particularly the version of 4 on it is really good. So get it for that, and also the curio of having an English version of the second game that was never released before. But the Monster World game, that was originally on Genesis, is an odd choice. It's a good game, but it pales in comparison to the Dragon's Curse game. The Dragon's Curse is a superior game in a lot of ways, even though the other one's good. So if you wanna delve into this, get Dragon's Curse, and then probably from there I would recommend playing Monster World 4, because those are the 2 best games in the series. And then you can delve a little deeper if you want to go into it. Wonder Boy is sold. The original Wonder Boy on Sega Master System is sold on the Wii Virtual Console still. You can still get a hold of that. But there's an even better way. You can get the Monster World collection on PS2 if you're into importing. It was one of the Sega Aegis collections. That is very comprehensive. It has everything, all the Sega versions of all those games. Not the TurboGrafx or Famicom versions of some of them. So that's a good place to be because they have pretty much, it's pretty comprehensive.
Great.
So yeah, so I would play this game, that was just released. It's a great place to start, and you don't have to be a fan of the series or even play the one before to understand what's going on. I mean, you could otherwise just play it as if that was just the beginning of the story, and a lot of people would, because the second game is very hard, and how would you ever beat it? So go for it. It's a great game, and it's only $20. It's very reasonable.
Okay, well, I'll decide for myself, because as we all know, I don't take anything Vice seriously. The rest of you listening,
I'm actually playing this game. I'm actually playing this one. You can take real advice from me on this one.
Well, okay. I believe you. I believe that you've played more video games and that you've beaten more video games than I've played in my life. You've probably forgotten more about video games than I've ever played. The fact that I say I don't take you seriously isn't necessarily an insult directed towards you. It's a statement about myself.
Plus, that's funny. Plus, I know that you have an affection for cute things, and Dragon's Trap or Dragon's Curse is a very cute game. It's in the best way possible. It's not like it's very very well drawn and fun.
All right. So I don't know. So I've been trying to pitch ideas for us to have a Twitch stream. So I'm tempted to buy the game and play it on stream while you guys make fun of me for a couple hours. So
fine with me.
For those of you who are used to me bashing on Vice and Lotus, you can watch all of my personal So my wife says I'm an extremely inflexible gamer. That I'm very bad at adapting new strategies. I've never had this exposed in any of the content that I've put on YouTube or anywhere else. So I'm kind of curious to try a fresh game. I've always done post commentary on my Let's Plays.
I think it's a good game to play because it's even though it's a game and that you could play in multiple sittings, it's not super long. Once you know how to beat it, it's one of those games that probably has 2 hours worth of content. 3 hours worth of content.
Yeah. The reviews said that the new game could be beaten on what they call the lazy Saturday. So yep. I am lazy and I'm not doing anything this Saturday. So,
but it's way worth it. It's a fun game and it's fun. So
all right, you heard it here first. Well, not really first, but you heard it from us. In addition to everywhere else where they've been talking about the game.
So that's all we have for this week on Reactive Consciousness. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps us promote and spread the awareness of the show, and then every bit keeps the show going. And you can also catch us on Tuesday on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast about our lives and pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as VyseTheBold, VyseTheBold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter.
And as for me, you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince, or you can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince, all one word.
And you cannot find me at PyroJackFrost, PyroJackFrost, anywhere where he is, because that's not me. But we promised that we would advertise him. Since we always give Vice
you should acquire PyroJackFrost.com as well as Lotus Prince.
Are we funding that out of the Corrective Consciousness budget?
Yeah, the vaults.
Coffers.
Yeah.
Let me check to see how many shillings I have for such an endeavor.
How many neo shekels it takes to rent a domain name? I feel like VyseTheBold is probably already owned. I haven't actually checked. But if it is,
looks up GoDaddy.com.
I got them on Google, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so yeah, you can actually find me at OldManStompy on any aspect of social media or any streaming service where I want to be found. So give it your best shot, and otherwise, leave me alone.
All right, until Tuesday, everyone. Catch you later.
Until next Tuesday, everyone.
Well, I might not be here. It's always a week by week thing, but until next time,
you should probably be free every week because one of us will call out.
I'll do my best to have absolutely nothing to do until Vice tells me that they need somebody to
perfect
to tap in. Well, in 2 weeks there's a new wrestling pay-per-view, so maybe I'll actually volunteer, and that week I won't be on.
You'll just call out so we can sub for you.
Well, anyway, as I was trying to say, cheers, I believe, is my usual sign-off, so...
that it is.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Bye.